There's something about the crunch of leaves under my boots that reminds me of death. Walking down an unlit path to get back to my house, I'm regaled with that feeling with every passing step as I travel through the park. A shortcut between my home and a friend's Halloween party. This is the first time in a long time that I have taken this route, because I don't usually mind the extra time walking and you never know who you can bump into in the woods. There's something about the see a lamppost up ahead, providing the dim light of an oasis in an otherwise desert of darkness. My footsteps become more frequent against the pavement and the crunch of the leaves. I pass under the lamppost and feel the temporary serenity of protection from the light around me. It's tempting to stop and bask in it, but this will only delay the long walk home to get to my secure location. I hear faint crunches in the dark behind me and I subtly turn my head without bringing too much attention to the fact that I'm skittish. I'm not easily spooked, but that doesn't mean I don't have the common sense reaction of feeling vulnerable when walking alone at night on a path surrounded by trees. Nothing but the darkness and the faint silhouette of the oak trees all around me. It's a full moon tonight, but that does little good against the thick canopy of the park I, for some inexplicable reason, have decided to jaunt through on this October night. Crunch of leaves under my boots that reminds me of death. Walking down an unlit path to get back to my house, I'm regaled with that feeling with every passing step as I travel through the park. A shortcut between my home and a friend's Halloween party. This is the first time in a long time that I have taken this route, because I don't usually mind the extra time walking and you never know who you can bump into in the woods. My pace quickens again after I pass through the halo of light, and after 100 feet, I look back at the glowing light to see if there is another traveler behind me or if it's just the autumn night playing tricks on me. Again, nothing. Relieved, my feet return to my normal pace and my mind is soothed. Another crunch. I jerk my head back, unable to play it cool as I had before, and again seen nothing. My heart is racing, and my steps begin to match it. There's another lamppost a few hundred feet in front of me, which temporarily reduces my anxiety. As I pass under it, my feeling of oasis has transitioned to a fear of being under a spotlight for all the darkness to see, with the light blinding me to all that the woods have to offer. A shiver runs up my spine and settles on top of my head. I look back at the light after passing another 100 feet, and I see it. A shadow darts across the halo of light as quickly as an ember flying away from a bonfire. Questions arise in my head. Did I really see that, or am I just letting the season get the best of me? Regardless, I begin to think about how fast I can get home without going into a full sprint. My hands instinctively go into my coat pockets and my legs move as fast as they can while always having one foot on the ground. One last bend before I get to the clearing and can escape to my modest home that now seems like a fortress I desperately need to be safe. I see the streetlights through the trees, and I know that home is just within reach, but I'm almost paralyzed by the approaching sound of crunching behind me. The steps are quicker than mine and close enough so that I can hear them even if they don't step on the dead leaves on the path. I go through the woods and onto the street, and without thinking my walk turns into a run as I go up my sidewalk, up my steps, fumbling with my keys as I open my front door and quickly shut it behind me and slide the deadbolt into the locked position. True oasis. I put my back against the closed door and exhale, but before I can draw another breath I turn around and look out the spy hole. It wasn't tricks and it wasn't the season. A shadow in the shape of a person steps out of the woods and is sauntering towards my sidewalk. Maybe it was someone who left the party just after me and lives near me, I tell myself, knowing it's a comforting lie. Maybe it's someone who was lost in the woods without a light and just followed someone who looked like they knew where they were going, telling myself another lie. I watch with horror as the shadow stops briefly in front of my house and begins to walk even more slowly up my sidewalk, following the steps I had taken not 30 seconds earlier. I hold my breath, fearing that the shadow can hear me on the other side of the door, and I can hear my heart pounding on the inside of my chest. As the shadow walks up the steps, it pauses at the top. The locked door dividing us now feels as thin as paper, and I weigh the consequences of sliding my couch in front of the door as a reinforcement versus the idea of creating that much noise. I remain still and keep my eye fixed on the spy hole. It seems paralysis made the decision for me. The shadow takes 3 steps closer to my front door and it no longer remains a shadow, but what I see makes me desperately wish it maintained the mystery the shadow provided. As it comes into the dull glow of the full moon I can see its eyes, or rather lack thereof. Where its eyes are is just smooth, pale skin, as though the eyelids had fused together. As I scan down the flat nose and thin lips of the shadow's face, I see protruding downwards from its mouth are 2 white points. Teeth. 2 abnormally long canines protruding from what is otherwise a demonic-looking shadow on my front steps. My heart stops and I can feel a burst of air come from my mouth. A vampire? I say to myself. This is just a sick joke from someone at the party. Again, lies I tell myself. I want to run away but my eye is magnetized to the spy hole. As I see the shadow inquisitively looking around my porch I glance at the end of my sidewalk. I look past it at first, but as my eyes focus, I see a second shadow standing there and begin to slowly walk up the sidewalk. My body repulses internally but my head doesn't move, and my eye stays fixed on the shadows. At the top of the steps, the second shadow says in a low mumble, "And there?" "Yes, not 2 minutes ago," replied my stalker in the woods. "Good, this shouldn't be too hard at all." "Nice work," replied the newcomer, who seemed to be in charge. "A vampire?" I say to myself. This is just a sick joke from someone at the party. Again, lies I tell myself. I want to run away but my eye is magnetized to the spy hole. As I see the shadow inquisitively looking around my porch I glance at the end of my sidewalk. I look past it at first, but as my eyes focus, I see a second shadow standing there and begin to slowly walk up the sidewalk. My body repulses internally but my head doesn't move, and my eye stays fixed on the shadows. At the top of the steps, the second shadow says in a low mumble, "And there?" "Yes, not 2 minutes ago," replied my stalker in the woods. "Good, this shouldn't be too hard at all." "Nice work," replied the newcomer, who seemed to be in charge. I'm finally able to turn around and my head is swimming. My first thought is the only one I can manage as I try to formulate a plan. Do I have a crucifix? What do I have that can be fashioned as a stake? What can I say? I'm a product of the horror movies and scary stories I grew up on, never expecting that it would ever teach something useful. I run to my bedroom and open a trunk at the foot of my bed. Digging through some knickknacks I find it, a crucifix that had been used at my grandma's funeral that my parents gave to me, hoping it would spark some sort of new engagement with the church I had lost interest in many years ago. I break off a leg of a chair at my kitchen table and, while it doesn't look like they do in the movies, I've fashioned a wood stake that will certainly be good enough for my purposes. Returning to my front door I steal one last look out of the spy hole and see one shadowy figure still on my porch. Where the other one went, I couldn't say, but I'll take it as a good sign and feel some relief. I muster as much of my courage as the situation allows and I slowly slide the deadbolt until the door is unlocked. Even more slowly, I turn the handle until there is nothing between me and the shadow except the door loose on its hinges. I count to 3 in my head and fling the door open. With my right hand, I wildly swing the chair leg in a downward motion, while my left holds the crucifix exactly how I've seen it done at all the movies. After 3 swings of the stake hitting nothing but air, I realize there's nothing on my front porch. Adrenaline coursing through my veins I step forward to the top of the stars, clutching the crucifix so hard I can feel it puncturing my skin. Nothing. Breath escapes me but I can't breathe in. I turn around and calmly walk back inside and close my door. Resting my back against my front door, I remember how to breathe. With my mind racing, I returned to the spy hole. I can wait here all night, I say out loud, knowing that I almost certainly won't. Seconds crawl by but they feel like hours as I finally start to relax. I slide the deadbolt back into the locked position and start to feel sane again. The deadbolt clicks in the locked position and the tension is leaving my body. As I begin to remove my eye from the spy hole, I feel two long teeth sink into my neck just below my ear. Leslie sat on the bar stool, sipping a margarita. She'd hit a run of bad luck in the past few months. First her boyfriend Ricky left her, then she lost her job. She got a new job, but not as well paying, of course. So, she had to move out of her house and into a cramped apartment. Her cat, Muffin, died. Her mother was ill, and needed her support, even though she couldn't support herself. With all that bad luck, it's little wonder that she let that guy sit next to her, buy her a drink, the same old routine. The fella's name was Jeffrey. He seemed nice enough, even if he was kind of a dweeb. He wore horn-rimmed glasses with a blue button-down shirt. He wasn't nerd skinny, exactly, but he was kind of on the thin side. They talked for a while, and then she left the bar. The next day, as she was walking home from work, Leslie saw Jeffrey again, standing at the bus stop a block away from her office building. "Hi, Leslie. Hey, I was thinking maybe we could head down to the bar tonight. I really had fun last night." She politely declined, and he said, "Okay, well, I'll see you again." She left for work the next day, and guess who she saw? Jeffrey was standing right there about a block from her house. "Hi, Leslie. You want to hook up tonight? I was thinking, maybe a movie?" She politely declined and went about her work. When she got home, she had a new message on the answering machine. "Hi, Leslie. It's me, Jeffrey. I just thought you might have changed your mind about the movies. Don't make me keep asking, just call me, bye." The next morning, Leslie left for work. Geoffroy was standing outside her door. "Hi, Leslie. Why'd you stand me up last night, huh?" "I just want a chance, Leslie, we can try, right?" After 3 days of annoyance, Leslie caved. "Fine, Geoffroy, we can try. Why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow night? We'll see how it goes, okay?" Leslie sure was having a bad run of luck. Ricky was in hysterics when he left her, her cat was dead, and now Geoffroy too. What was left of his corpse was found a week later. It was a typical fall morning. I sought out my usual seat at the local bistro down the street. The previous day had been an excruciatingly long one, and the one thing that got me through was knowing I always had my solo breakfast date in the morning. I sat down on the familiar comfort of the wicker chair, basking in the morning light streaming through the large glass window. I opened my laptop to check the local news. I was attempting to act more adult-like, and adults do that, right? I opened the browser, and was taken aback by the big, bold letters on the headline, "Third woman found drowned, a serial killer is arising." I involuntarily gasped so loud that the elderly man sitting in my peripherals gave a startled jump. In the description, it was said that the women were all in their early 20s, with no true connection with one another. The only evidence tying them together is that they all had locks of hair missing upon investigation. Suddenly feeling uneasy, I left money on the table to cover my untouched breakfast, sent a quick email to work explaining that I needed a sick day, and hastily grabbed my belongings. I started walking down the familiar cobblestone road, journeying back home. Pepper spray clasped in one hand, my keys grasped in the other. I felt paranoid, and my heart was exploding with adrenaline. I kept believing I was being followed, turning only to see a bare dry leaf skidding across the pavement. Before I had time to even shift my view back to ahead of me, I bumped straight into a tall, muscular figure that towered over me. My fight or flight kicked in, until I looked up to see kind eyes and an apologetic smirk. He asked if he could escort me home, given the recent danger that overcompassed the town. As we arrived to my townhouse, I learned that his name was John, and that he would be accompanying me to breakfast the next morning. The first few months, we were blissful in the throes of young love. The honeymoon phase never faltered, the love grew stronger every minute. And then suddenly, when I expressed my undying love and proposed moving in with him, John grew distant. The kindness in his eyes had been replaced with worry and despair. He officially broke things off with me a week later. I decided to start following him home. I'm not being predatory, I told myself, I'm just making sure he's doing alright. As I drove by, I saw what my deepest and most dreading thought I had. He was opening the passenger side door of his car for a woman, long, naturally wavy red hair, her thin waist that accentuated her beautiful curved hips, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. My heart immediately burst into flames, my eyes immediately welling, streaming salty tears into my gaping mouth, and my hands grasping the steering wheel so tight, I thought my circulation was cutting off. Not wanting to pay any attention to myself, I drove home, every emotion filling my entire being to the core. As I got home, I opened a bottle of wine that had been collecting dust, I hardly ever drank, and let my dying insides feel the warmth and comfort of the alcohol coursing through me. After the first bottle came a second, and after the second came a third. I must have really blacked out, because when I awoke, I was sitting at the edge of a canal not too far from home. I tried to search my mind for any evidence of how I got there, until I saw a figure approach in the darkness. As they got closer and closer, I blacked out again. I awoke to sirens and lights and several EMTs surrounding me, all seemingly relieved that I had come to. When I asked what had happened, they explained that they found me washed up on shore. It had looked like I had a wicked fight and battle I had endured, and they were shocked I made it out alive. Once the police wrapped me in a blanket and finished questioning me, I exhaled a sigh of relief. I knew my plan would have been foolproof, and that staging myself as the victim would push myself further down the suspect list. I knew the redhead would meet me there, if I posed as John, sending a brief text. One thing I didn't mention was in the headlines. Every woman that had gone missing was one who had taken one of my lovers away. Suspicion started to rise as they started to bring me in for questioning more and more, but I knew at least now I was safe, as long I tended to the body shortly. As the officer took one final glance back at me, I kept on the mask of confusion, sorrow, and fear. When he turned his back, I allowed myself to smile, as I reached into my pocket and brushed my fingers against my new trinket, a lock of wavy red hair.